Hello and welcome to our final interview of Series 1. And obviously today is a massive celebration to end the series. So who better than Isabel Mack, the founder of the Partykit network. Hello there.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So much for joining us. It really is a pleasure to have you on. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, if that's okay, about having a more sustainable celebration. So first up, what is the Partykit network?
So the Partykit Network is a non-profit organisation which I started in the UK almost 2 years ago. It is very much an accidental network. So I got into the kind of zero waste lifestyle about 3 years ago and was following a blog who happened to write about the concept of a party kit. And I was like, this is a really good idea. So basically, someone within your local community runs a box of reusable plates, cups, bowls, decorations, and then people within the community can hire the box for their party and then return it so it can be used again. And as a parent with a small child, I was like, this is amazing. Like, why was this not a thing before? How do I find my local party kit? So I put some messages out on like local parenting groups to ask if there was one in my city. And discovered that someone had set one up. So then I was like, okay, so then how do we like tell more people about it? And so I started a Facebook group, and then it just kind of snowballed. So we exist to connect people planning a party with people who have a party kit, and it's as simple as that.
That's brilliant. Oh, wow. So yeah, what was it then that kind of triggered that inspiration? Was there a party that you were about to plan or something like that?
I think as my son was kind of entering the age of endless birthday parties, although this was pre-pandemic, I was quite conscious about the amount of waste that parties generate. And so when I read the blog post about the concept of a party kit, for me, it was just a massive light bulb moment. And it was just an opportunity to make something that should be easy really accessible. So for me, prior to discovering party kits, the go-to option would be to go to the local supermarket and buy disposable plates and cups, use them for the party and throw them away. And I'd never considered where my rubbish goes, and I hadn't considered the resources required to go into those party plates. Um, and it was only as I was working on kind of reducing our waste as a family in other areas, I was kind of like, this is a problem. So yeah, discovering party kits was definitely a real light bulb moment for me.
I really think something you mentioned there, it's something that goes under the radar. You know, you have a barbecue or a party, it kind of just slips under there. People always talk about single-use plastics in supermarkets and so on and so forth, but then they kind of forget. And the amount of parties there are, you've got to think how many birthdays there are in the world.
Yeah, and I was very conscious about that. One of my godchildren, it seemed when he was at primary school age, he pretty much had at least 2 birthday parties a week, it seemed. And you just don't consider the resources that go into making a paper plate. So they aren't just made of paper, they're normally made of mixed materials, so they'll have a plastic coating probably. They can't be recycled because they're made of mixed materials and they're normally contaminated with food waste. In order to make that paper plate, you've had to grow a tree, chop down a tree, process the paper. All that uses a lot of water, then you've got to transport it. So I was just shocked at the amount of waste that happens just so that you can have a paper plate with a piece of cake on it. And so for me, being able to offer people an alternative which is reusables is just such a simple but effective idea.
Yeah, it's that kind of idea of, you know, when you have a party, I don't really want to do any washing up.
Yeah.
Come on, just do a little bit of washing up. So, other than like the materials, how else can we have a sustainable party?
I think for me, the biggest area where you get a lot of waste is the food. And I think the fear of under catering really plays into this, and I am definitely guilty of that. Um, as the host, you don't want to run out of food, but on the other hand, what do you do when you have loads of leftovers? So I think there's kind of two parts to that. One is being realistic about how much your guests might eat. So if you're not holding your party at a regular meal time, like not catering full-on meal is probably not required. The other part is what you can do if you do over cater. So asking guests to bring containers with them so they can take home leftovers, sharing via food apps or community fridges are a great way to give away unused food that's still edible that you might not personally be able to eat all of, or freezing things. So you can freeze birthday cake, you can freeze crisps should you ever have any of those left over. So there are ways to be smarter about food and not end up with loads of leftovers. I think another area is party bags. So as a parent, I think most parents dread the plastic-filled plastic party bag. And that's one of the great things about the Partykit network. There's a real community of people who are trying to find different ways of ensuring we can still have lots of fun at parties without missing out. But also with reducing waste. So we've had loads of ideas. So one of them is a lucky dip box. So you just have a box with maybe shredded newspaper in, and each child goes and picks out and they get a surprise, which hopefully isn't plastic tat. Or someone might buy a pack of books, so each child gets a book, or party bags made of other materials like fabric or cardboard boxes. Another of my favourites is the cookie recipe jar. So you collect jam jars, and in the jar you put ingredients like flour, sugar, and then things like chocolate drops. You give each child a cookie cutter as well and a little recipe, and then when they get home they can make the cookies by just adding some sort of fat like butter. And it's just such a simple idea, there's no waste, it's something, an activity to do when they get home, and it's something nice to eat as well.
Oh wow, you're basically planning my daughter's birthday party.
Oh yeah.
Right now. This is exceptional.
Yeah, probably the cookie jar recipe one is one of my favorites. There's a guide to making your own on our website. And I think the other area that we've done quite a lot of work around is decorations. So many of the party kits also lend decorations. So they are on the whole alternative to things like balloons. You'll find fabric bunting, pom-pom garlands, paper fans. When you start to look into it, there are actually loads of ideas rather than go-to balloons. And I think for me, I was quite shocked about how the impact that balloons can have once they get released into the environment. And I think I had been kind of sucked into this kind of, oh, these balloons are biodegradable. But actually, when you look into the realities of it, they're just as damaging. So we have worked quite hard to find all sorts of different alternatives to decorations, and I'm always adding to our list of ideas. So the newest one is tassels made out of wool put into a garland. I like that one. And the great thing is you can use them again and again. So just like you might have your Christmas decorations packed away in the attic, you can have a birthday decorations box which you get out for each birthday, so it can work in just the same way.
Makes perfect sense, but just something like you said before, you just don't think of it. So the next question is, why don't people use more materials at their celebrations? I think we've touched on it a bit with the just not thinking of it, but
yeah, I think awareness. Yeah, I think that we just haven't, these are just things that we haven't learnt about. We haven't learnt about where our waste goes. Like, I didn't know that in this county where I live, all our general waste goes to incineration. Like, I'd never even thought about it. And I think we've also grown, for many of us, particularly those who grew up in the kind of 80s and 90s, we grew up in a disposable era. Everything was you buy it and throw it away. And reusables just weren't a thing. And I think they were seen as old-fashioned. And so we just haven't lived in that with that mindset. So it is a shift for us to think about these things in different ways, and parties are no exception to that.
Wonderful. I completely agree. Like, obviously being a child of the 80s and 90s myself, I remember all these parties, party bags, this, that, the other, just get it, you chuck this away, you do, and you don't think about the reusable side of things.
I think that where mass production happened in those decades, things became so cheap. So it was cheap for our parents to buy party bags and buy decorations that we just used once. And so there just wasn't any thought to it.
It is that kind of cheap side of things. Even now, you know, it is cheap to go and buy a pack of 10 plates, and it's easier than stacking your dishwasher at the end of a party or something like that. So the convenience side of things does really get in the way of people changing behaviours.
And I think for me, that's another reason why party kits have really resonated with me, and why I've kind of run with the network idea, is that particularly in the UK, most party kits, it is cheaper to hire a kit than to buy the equivalent disposables. And that's such a shift from many kind of what's seen as it's expensive to do greener living. Actually, with party kits, it isn't. And many kits will wash up for you as well, which is an added benefit. But actually, it's not as hard work as we're kind of made to believe.
Well, no, it really isn't. So many people now have dishwashers and so on and so forth, which is another one of my bugbears. You know, people who understack their dishwashers, but that's something completely different. I won't get onto that now. I've got one more question for you though, and that is, how can people become more sustainable when it comes to family celebrations, or just celebrations in general? Yeah,
I think that before buying something, consider if you can borrow it, or if you are going to buy, can you buy something that you can reuse many times? So even things like wrapping paper, you can use fabric instead, which you could use many times. You can use fabric bags. You could even reuse paper should you be careful enough, although that might spoil some of the fun. But there are alternatives. And even things like in the UK, there's a traditional party game called Pass the Parcel, where you wrap up a present, there's lots of layers, and then when the music stops, each child takes a layer off. Many of the party kits have different size reusable fabric bags, so you use that instead of wrapping paper. And so that's a really, rather than just going ahead and wrapping up and as you normally would, is just stopping and thinking, is there a more sustainable way of doing this? And that applies to all parts of life, I think, but particularly when you are planning a party, you are on the whole making considered decisions about stuff. So it's just really about adding that kind of green hat on at the same time.
I used to use tin foil to wrap presents.
Oh, you can recycle that. You can reuse it.
Exactly, because then I would then go and use it. You know, but I'm not sure how keen people were that, you know, they'd have their Christmas present wrapped, they'd unwrap it, and then the next day they'd come back and say, oh look, we've baked some cookies. Where did you get that tin foil from? Probably clean. So yeah, tin
foil and reuse it, but yeah, I think
I try to go more down now I try and use more kind of cloth and stuff like that. It's really helped me.
Yeah, scarves, that's easy. Yeah.
So well, that's about it from me. You've answered loads of my questions, and as I say, you've really helped plan well, not only my daughter's birthday, but also our end of series celebration. So a huge thanks to you for that. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
That if you're interested in setting up your own party kit, so in order for a party kit concept to really work, we have to have people who can support the concept and lend tableware to their local community. So if you'd like to get involved, we have a downloadable guide on our website, which hopefully Harry will put all the details.
Yeah, absolutely, it's all in the description box below, so don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.